Freedom for all.
Radio for all.
You are now live with the Humble Prince on Sahara FM Radio. Yeah. And we're back live with the Humble Prince on Sahara FM Radio. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you for joining us again. Tonight's show was brought to you by the law offices of Bolanli Mayuwa PC. Please go to their website, www.mayuwalaw.com, for all your legal consultations, legal advice. They're there to help you out. Divorce, immigration, everything. They're waiting for you. Thank you very much. So right now we have on the phone a very special guest. She's an Emmy Award Winning Journalist, an author, historian, talk show host, publisher, producer, and creator of BackPax Children's Media. She's been engaged by history and culture since childhood. Also interesting, at 8, in the wake of the landmark Brown versus Board of Education school desegregation decision, she was one of the 4 children selected to end the de facto segregation in New York. Her return to New York City's desegregation test school for the 45th anniversary of Brown was covered by ABC, CBS, and the WNYC. And right now, she's live on Sahara FM Radio. Please, let's give a huge round of applause for Dr. Janus Adams. Dr. Adams, are you there?
Hi, I am here and glad to be.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. It's really, really a pleasure to have you here. I'm really, really excited, even if not a little bit nervous that you're here, but thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. So, really, one of the reasons we wanted you to join us tonight was because of recent events that's taking place. We know in France with the Charlie Hebdo and some events going on in Saudi Arabia pertaining to freedom of speech. So we just wanted to know if you could help us shed some light on those events. So let me just start off. How would you define freedom of speech? What is it exactly, so that people can know?
To me,
Yes.
freedom of speech, and I want to get into some things about it.
Right.
But the basic issue of freedom of speech is the right to speak one's mind. However,
Thank you.
the right to speak one's mind has some parameters. In the United States, the parameter is considered, yes, you have the right to free speech, but you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater. That is the parameter that is legally used. And from my standpoint,
Yes.
looking at what's been going on,
Right.
I think we have to look in greater detail at what it means to have a crowded theater and recognize a few more fires.
Wow. Well, let me just jump into what happened in France. Some people say that they have the right to maybe make fun of religions and say whatever they want, and they don't have the right to attack. Well, so how do you think freedom of speech relates to religion when it comes to religion?
I don't separate out religion. I separate out, look at things on the basis of respect for one another, respect for other people.
Okay.
In my freedom of religion may be your good taste. And a lot of the people who talk about freedom of speech
Right.
do not look at the gateways and the doors that they put up around themselves that they don't say violate freedom of speech. They say it's in poor taste.
True.
So sometimes I think we have to really look very carefully at what we mean by certain things. There should be no need to say this, but let us say it, period. There is no reason, there is no justification whatsoever to go around slaughtering other people.
Right.
But we have to look at that across the board. There is no justification to go and slaughter somebody because of their religion, but there's no justification to go and slaughter somebody just because 19 people killed thousands of people in this country, and now you're holding everybody with the same religion responsible. It is not so. If it were, then we should be holding responsible every Christian because of the one, all of a sudden now I'm forgetting his name, but the person who brought down the Oklahoma federal office building.
McVeigh.
Timothy McVeigh.
Right.
Timothy McVeigh. Then are we going to hold every Christian responsible for that? Let's go beyond Timothy McVeigh. Let's talk about the anguish of certain people and how groups of people. Let's talk about the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, which is America's greatest homegrown terrorist organization. Let's talk about them. Do we essentially now hold everybody with who a sheet in their closet, a white sheet in their closet, and who is Christian? Do we hold them responsible for the KKK? And indeed, the Ku Klux Klan has always said that it was a Christian organization.
I know.
But we don't tar every single Christian under the rubric of the Ku Klux Klan. Okay. So why we're doing this now because of Islam. And some people will say, well, they are out there saying that they're doing it in the name of Islam. Well, people can say anything they want. Maybe those people said they were doing it in the name of Islam, but a lot of other people, billion people to be specific, say that they are peaceful in the name of Islam.
Right.
Why are you preferencing the crazy people over the sane people?
Right. Well, I don't think, we're trying to impugn the entire
no,
all
but
Muslim.
that is what is being done in the United States. Now, we are, not to interrupt you, but just to qualify what I'm saying.
Right.
We're talking to an international audience. And when I was speaking from the point of view of listening to American media. American media is tarring and feathering everybody simply on the basis of their being Muslim.
Right. I know it's
that's all you have to say.
Yeah, no, it's a very touchy subject. And I know some Muslims, I was watching some shows on CNN where some other Muslims have actually come out and called out and, discredited those actions of those people because one thing I say is that, I got a lot of flack for this. I'm saying if you know these people are going to attack when you mock their prophet, why don't just leave them alone? Go make fun of Christians. Christians don't really care. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you have a point.
Yeah.
Why? And also the kinds of things that you're doing. Years ago when I was a graduate student, I applied for a job at an advertising agency.
Okay.
And this advertising agency had been using, this was out in California, and this advertising agency was a white-owned advertising agency that was regularly using black voices or black-sounding voices to give a kind of gospel flavor to selling the most mundane things, but using the traditions and the sensitivities or sensibilities of traditional African American music, religious music, to sell tires, to sell whatever.
Wow. And
I was supposed to do a test ad for a company called Varithane. For some reason, I remember it. It's not important, but I just happen to remember. And I used the Hallelujah chorus. Just because of the way the copy that I had laid in, and it laid in perfectly to the Hallelujah chorus. Well, I was told in no uncertain circumstances that was inappropriate and in poor taste to be using the Hallelujah chorus for merchandising and marketing purposes. Well, hello, then why was the same company using African American religious idioms and traditions to sell? They did not in any way equate the two. So it's not just a matter that Christians don't care. It's that you people in these Christian nations like France, Italy, etc.,
Right.
already know the rules of their society.
Yeah,
And they
true.
don't choose to violate them because people, not so much that people would be up in arms, but basically it wouldn't be considered funny. And they wouldn't be considered in good taste, and nobody would get the joke, and so nobody would buy the publication. Well, why can't we respect other people the same way?
Right.
What is so hard about that?
Right.
Now, as to those people who are using it as an excuse to go on a murderous rampage, I think we have to think very carefully about the pain that those people are in on a daily basis to get to the point where they are willing to sacrifice their lives, they're willing to endanger their families, they're willing to do all of this supposedly in the name of Allah.
Yeah.
And I put it to you that when we translate what they've said and come up with that definition, that we are missing the point. These are people who were colonized and villainized and exploited by Europe and the United States.
Wow, that's very, yeah, well, very true. Sorry, just two more questions I want to ask you. With regards to like freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and in this day and age when we know social media is all over the place, how do you think both of them are intertwined?
I think there are a lot of people who hide behind social media to say terrible things.
Right.
And to be totally irresponsible.
Yeah.
And indeed, many of them would not. I've written a newspaper column for many years. I wrote a column for 16 years. And the tenor of the conversation, the letters that I would get, the difference between the same person writing me a letter and that person writing something that they think is clever on a website is astounding.
Wow.
It has come to a point where certain publications are now completely monitoring it. You can't put a column on the New York Times website that hasn't been monitored first. Not censored, but monitored. So that if it's a ridiculous comment, it should not go up. And other people don't have to be assaulted by your lack of common sense and good taste.
Right.
I believe the Huffington Post is beginning to do the same thing. On the other hand, so certain people use it as license to say things that they would never say one-on-one, and they go off. But I think those people need to check themselves, because at a certain point you have to ask, why is there so much bile inside of you that this is the way you have to bring it out?
Right.
You know? There is a phrase that bears remembering at every turn, and it is love thyself and love thy neighbor as thyself. And it is very trivial, but it is because it is so basic, and it is because it is so basic that we need to remember it so much.
Yeah. You know, one thing I like to say with regards to freedom of speech is that I think, you know, even though we have it, like you said, it's limited to an extent, and I think we should censor it for just for the purpose of a common larger good. You know, we should, I know, just because, like you said, just because we have the freedom of speech, we can't just go yell fire in the building or yell bomb on a plane. You know, I think we need to apply some kind of judgment and discretion while applying our freedom of speech and expression. So that's one thing.
And when you
go ahead.
When you feel the need to do that, then you need to check yourself. I've mentioned the pain that people are going through the world over.
Yeah.
Still the result of colonialism, of economic exploitation, of segregation, all of these kinds of things. But at a certain point, even when you feel that kind of pain, as we all do, I mean, each day I get up and sometimes I have to really just look and say, one more day of this madness, especially when we here in the United States. You mentioned that I'm one of the 4 children who desegregated New York City's
right.
public schools. Well, it is extremely painful to me to think that a study came out this year and the most segregated state education system in the United States is what? New York.
I know.
So, in other words, my childhood, and I'm only one, so I'm just speaking symbolically, but the childhoods of thousands of children all over this country that were sacrificed in the name of making things better,
right.
This is what we've come to. This is what we've come to, that Trayvon Martin is shot down by a wannabe, that Mike Brown is killed with a nonsensical explanation, and now, these are no easy times.
Definitely.
So,
very hard, very difficult times. I agree.
But at the same point, I have to look and say, what is it that's stronger? These people are not behaving like Dr. King. Okay? Right. And I'm not saying that Dr. King is the be-all and the end-all. Dr. King was a man of great strength, fortitude, and vision, but he also had people who he admired and emulated.
Definitely.
They're not Mahatma Gandhi either. They're not Nelson Mandela, and Nelson Mandela was a soldier on 2 fronts. Yep. Because he was involved in the freedom fight that was a military one,
right?
As well as being a soldier of peace. So at some point, I think that when you're hurting, number one, the rest of us have an obligation to acknowledge and not just skip over the idea that millions of people are hurting for real reasons. And when you find that you're one of those people, hopefully you can come in community with others that will do something else, do something in the spirit of justice, right. Not in the spirit of ruining your own life.
I agree. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you though, before you go into I know you have a project coming up called the BackPax expedition, that we're going to get those pictures on the slides on the screen soon. But back then, you as this little 8-year-old girl breaking the de facto desegregation in New York City. Please, can you just tell us what was that experience like?
Well,
if you can remember anything about it.
Oh, please. Yes, I remember. And you'll find that most of the children who went through this in different parts of the country, it's something you'll never forget. Yeah. But I want to say, people always say, well, why did your parents put you through that? And I think we have to also remember what people were going through
right.
Without it. So it was a sacrifice that we were asked to make, but we were also being sacrificed every day, whether we made that sacrifice or not.
True.
Our children were not being treated well just because they didn't make the sacrifice. So for me, yes, there were the traditional horrors and indignities and, the teachers. There were parents outside screaming. Interestingly, as opposed to the images that we have of desegregation in the United States, and we usually see pictures in the South.
Right.
We don't really have an image of what took place in the North. And we did not have the helicopters swarming overhead. We did not have the National Guard. But that doesn't mean that we did not have our own humiliations. Maybe the people who opposed desegregation, they may have gone crazy, but they may not have gone mad. In the South, they definitely went mad.
They went, yeah. Right.
Almost like they had rabies, and in a way they did.
Wow.
In the North, they were not so dignified either, and there were enough cross burnings and there were enough torchings in the North over the years.
Right.
that we should not ignore that, but it was not the same thing as the South because the North had had a longer tradition of trying to cope with getting beyond it than the South did. Yeah. The South is still fighting the Civil War even today.
Yeah.
And they are still blaming the victim for the crime that their own ancestors committed. I mean, even now you will hear people talk about, our way of life. And they never bother to mention that their way of life, including terrorizing, torturing, murdering, branding, all these terrible things to other people.
Look at what they did to Black Wall. Look at what they did to Black Wall Street, for instance. You know, that's
please
so,
torched it completely.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely.
So in my case as a child, we experienced all that. But the one point that I wanted to make about it is that what we did have was a community of people who were united in the idea that they were going to move forward, do this, but they were also going to really look out for us on our off hours. So even if it was not my grandmother and grandfather and mother and father, if it was a neighbor, that neighbor was still determined to make me know that they were proud of what they were doing. And it was in that context that I met Dr. King. Wow. When he spoke at the Riverside Church in New York City, which is for people who have not been to New York and seen the Riverside Church, it is more of a contemporary cathedral.
Right.
And when he would speak there on a regular basis after the Montgomery bus boycott that brought him and Mrs. Parks to world acclaim. And at a certain point, I happened to be on the receiving line for him, and somebody must have pushed my cousin and me up to the front because this is a large place. But that part I don't remember. What I do remember is that he very nicely looked down and said hello and smiled almost in a fatherly way. And he said, "And what are you doing for our people?"
Wow.
And someone said to him that my cousin and I were 2 of the 4 children. And he took time to take us to the side and tell us that what we were doing was important.
Definitely.
For our people, that it would be important to us in years to come. And because of what we were doing, other children would not have to go through the same things that we were doing.
Fantastic.
He told us that we were beautiful or handsome in my cousin's case. And that was basically, he was Dr. King, but he was also in the tradition. That is what we had that got us through it. We had the love and support of our communities.
Wow, fantastic. Please, Nick, let's give a round of applause for that. That was fantastic, man. Thank you so much. Dr. Adams, please, we'll definitely, there's so much I think you want to tell us about. We definitely have to get you in the studio soon. I know this is just like an impromptu interview, and again, thank you for joining us. But before we go, please, we'd like you to talk. I know you have a new project called BackPax Expeditions. Please, shed some light on that real quick, please.
Very quickly,
yes, Nick, you get the...
We're using BackPax Expedition is a magazine and online community for the diaspora worldwide.
Nice.
The mission of it is to infuse our kids with the history and culture that they need, but we use travel and adventure to engage kids in history and culture. Okay. And as one step back, as an aside, I will say that especially with what's going on in the United States and the world in general, but particularly here with the violence that's being meted out to our young people, every time parents have to sit down and have that talk, as we call it, the talk, with our children, we're taking a lot away from them. BackPax Expeditions is one woman's attempt to give something back to those children, something that will be fuel for them, something that will nurture. Our website, if I may give it,
yes,
is backpaxkids.com. That's BackPax, B-A-C-K-P as in Peter, A-X, for Pache or peace. So BackPaxkids.com.
Right, and that's been flashing on our screen, so all the viewers and listeners could definitely see. So I know, like I said, we just got you here quickly, impromptu, but we definitely need to get you in the studio because I love that project and giving back to the kids because I'm a firm believer in education. I believe the one thing we owe our kids and worldwide is to definitely educate them. I believe that will take them further in life. So again, I'd just like to say thank you very much for joining us. This was definitely an honor for you to join us, and we really, really appreciate it. But before you go, please, are there any last words, or is there anybody you want to give acknowledge or give a shout out to? We like to do that here at Sahara FM Radio.
Well, to the ancestors.
Nice, yeah.
Okay, to the ancestors and those of our children who are the ancestors of the future. So to our past and our future.
Definitely. Again, Dr. Adams, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. I just want to say thank you to my producer. She made this happen. OB and Wild Bay. She put everything together. She made this happen, man. So big shout out to her. Thank you very much. So on that note, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to have the callback segment with Diola and one of our guests, Bukola Oriofe. And we're going to be talking about the 2015 Nigerian presidential election, which is coming up, which is just less than a month away. And who are you voting for, Buhari or Good Luck? And we'd like to hear why. The number to call is 646-559-6640, extension 3. Again, I just want to say that tonight's show is brought to you by the law offices of Bolanle Mayowa PC. Please go to their website, www.mayowalaw.com, and go there for all your legal consultation, immigration, domestic, everything. They're ready to help you out. And if you'd like to advertise on Live with the Humble Prince, please send an email to publisher@saharareporters.com or humbleprincelive@gmail.com. We'll be right back.